Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address you all today at the Connecting Locally webinars on social inclusion research. To start with, I would also like to welcome the participants of this webinar, including those from across Ireland and abroad. As Minister of State with responsibility for disability, I am passionate about promoting the inclusion of people with disabilities in society. In recent years, my department has been proud to provide grant funding through the Disability Participation and Awareness Fund to a range of organisations to help remove barriers to community involvement and to support the promotion and implementation of the UNCRPD in communities. In total, 2.5 million was made available to local authorities in 2021, with an additional 3 million in this year's call, which closed on March 31st. It is fantastic to see such great work emerging from this grant, and I want to commend Kildare County Council, the UCD Centre for Disability Studies and CARE for producing the 3 research studies.
Hello everyone. Welcome to today's Connecting Locally webinar. I am Deirdre Murphy, CEO of CARE. Today you will hear about research that we hosted in participation with the UCD Centre for Disability Studies and Kildare County Council. CARE's mission statement includes promoting inclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. We provide a range of services to 88 children and 460 adults in counties Kildare, Wicklow and East Offaly here in Ireland. When we got research funding through the Disability Awareness and Participation Fund, the pandemic restrictions were beginning to ease. We were very keen to support action research that would help us to deliver on a very important strategic goal of ours, which is to support people to develop more opportunities for social connections. Developing our strategic plan involved consultation with people that we support. People told us that they felt lonely and that they didn't have the kind of engagement or connections that they wanted. The results of the research you will hear about today shines a light on both barriers and facilitators for people with intellectual disabilities being included as equals in society. Equality is what is intended by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which our service aims to implement. The research findings will be of great benefit to us in CARE. The purpose of this webinar is to share the results of this valuable research with others who want the best possible quality of life for people with intellectual disabilities. May I now introduce you to the core research team. Anne-Marie Potter is a Social Inclusion, Development, Education and Research Officer in CARE. Anne-Marie has worked in frontline services in CARE for 22 years in a range of support roles. She has a keen interest in promoting accessibility and in overcoming the barriers to inclusion in people's everyday lives. Dr. Geraldine Boland is a freelance researcher and adjunct assistant professor with the UCD Centre for Disability Studies. Geraldine worked in a range of leadership positions in frontline disability services for 23 years. In recent years, her research has focused on social inclusion in neighbourhoods for adults with intellectual disabilities. Her interest is in real-world research that improves quality of life. I am delighted that the research team have taken such an interest in these webinars. May I take this opportunity to welcome all our international participants and also all of you who are joining online today from Ireland. I would now like to introduce you to Davy from our Voice for Care group to speak to you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Davey. You are welcome to this webinar. I live in County Wicklow in Ireland. I am a member of Voice for Care. I help managers to make service better for everyone. I am in a stable group for research that you will learn about today. I wake up from all over the world today. Thank you for coming along. We hope that you will learn from our research.
Great. Well, after that warm welcome from all of our opening addressees and hearing about all the people involved in this webinar, I realize there is one group of people it would be lovely to hear a little bit more of or more from, which is you who are joining us. And so just before we go further with the webinar, I'd like to invite everyone who's joining the webinar to open up the chat, click on the little chat button and open up the chat box. And maybe it could be you or someone, one member of your group, if you're joining in a group, and just put in the chat where in the world you are joining this webinar from. So it could be maybe where in Ireland, because you might be across Ireland in different places for those of us that are in Ireland, or you might be in another country. So yeah, so just we should see your name showing up, and we can see here, we've got Dublin, Sligo, Galway, Kildare. I'm looking out for anyone who's not in Ireland. That would be great to see. So Skerries, O'Donegal, lovely. Yeah, wonderful. And if you look through the chat, you can see us all joining, bringing our practices, our passion for this topic, the work that we're doing from all counties in Ireland and possibly even further afield. So really, this is just a moment to note that we're maybe joining from many different places, but we're also gathering in the same place, in this online place, to connect to work and to practices and activities and to research that is really of interest to all of us. So thank you so much, everyone. Lovely to get a sense of where we are all across the country. And with that, I am going to bring up our chair of the webinar, who's brought us all together here, and you've heard her introduced, which is Dr. Geraldine Boland. So I will just bring you up onto the online stage, Geraldine, and then we can continue and move into the main action of the webinar this morning. Oh, and Geraldine, I will, with all my muting, I will just invite you to unmute. Yeah.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Ali, for guiding us through that introduction. It's fascinating to hear where people who share this interest in social inclusion are from. And I'm facilitator of today's webinar, but first let me start with introducing you to the panel. You've already met Ali Warner, who's our IT coordinator, who's done absolutely sterling work to help us out with the webinar. And let's say hello now to Anne-Marie Potter. Anne-Marie, you might like to unmute there and just say a quick hello to us.
Okay, hi, can you hear me there?
No, yeah. Hi there,
hi everyone. Thanks for coming. Hope you find today's presentation of help and interesting to you.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie. And you'll be hearing presentations from Anne-Marie, but you'll also be hearing some presentations from Ciara Byrne, who is another core member of our research team. And Ciara is a speech and language therapist, a senior speech and language therapist working here in Care. Hi there, Ciara.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. Thank you very much for joining in the webinar. And again, like Anne-Marie said, I hope you really enjoy what we have to share today, and thanks for coming.
Great. Now, we had 9 co-researchers on this project, and one of our co-researchers is Mary from Newbridge. Mary, would you like to say hello? And Mary and Anne-Marie have made some videos about what it was like to join the self-advocacy course, and then afterwards to become a co-researcher on accessibility in your town. You're going to see those later. So, hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Hello, welcome.
Can you hear me?
I can indeed hear you
Yeah.
very well. Very well.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. And
Thank you very much.
great. And we're going to be hearing a lot about your hometown throughout the day.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks very much.
That's great, Mary. So you can mute again there now.
Okay, thank you.
And then on your screen, you'll also see Noreen Clancy. And Noreen is an advocacy officer in Inclusion Ireland, which is a national advocacy organisation here in our country. And Noreen is based in Sligo, and that's in northwest of Ireland. So Noreen is going to help. You're going to help us out today, Noreen,
Yes.
to keep track of any questions
Hi,
that you wish to. Yeah, Noreen's going to help us keeping track of questions, and we might remind you again that if you have questions, you can put those in the chat box as we go along. Noreen, thanks so much for coming along, and you're really helping us out today. Thank you. Okay. So just a couple of other introductory remarks. I mentioned there were 9 self-advocates who became co-researchers on this project, and you'll be hearing the voices of 5 of the 9 people today. Now, we've chosen to pre-record short video clips, and our aim is to facilitate the 5 co-researchers to be co-presenters today. And we chose videos so that we could include shots of places in Newbridge, their town, and these places that matter to people. So video was it was really a good format for us so that co-researchers could show as well as talk about their experiences. Okay. So Mary will be joining us the panel at the end on behalf of the 9 people who are co-researchers. So now for the first presentation on self-advocacy and accessibility. And this presentation is by Anne-Marie, Ciara, and Mary also. So Ali's going to show that to you now. And at the end of this, we're going to have a short Q&A session. And I might just give you a little reminder now to turn on your captions and look for the CC button at the bottom of your screen. We recommend the captions as that will help you to understand. It'll give you subtitles and that will help you to understand all of our content. So over to Ali now for the first presentation, which is on our self-advocacy course on accessibility.
Hi, my name is Anne-Marie Potter and I'm the Social Inclusion Officer in CARE. Today, myself and Ciara Byrne and Geraldine Boland will be talking to you about the advocacy and the accessibility project and how adults with disabilities were supported to overcome barriers in their locality. So these were our research questions. When we think about accessibility, it's often about practical things like parking or accessible toilets. We wanted to see how adults with intellectual disabilities could be supported to campaign for accessible services in their local town. We wanted to look at all aspects of accessibility and what were the barriers that people with intellectual disabilities face when shopping or using services like the post office or the library. Our core question was, how accessible is Newbridge Town for people with intellectual disabilities? We wanted people to speak out on changes that would directly benefit them when out shopping or using the services in their town. So what was our approach? Our study was based on action research, meaning that we intended to learn about accessibility and bring about positive change. If anyone listening wants to ask more or find out more about methodology, just ask a question. So we recorded a video communication. It went out to all 80 service users that live in or near Newbridge in the town. In the 3-minute video ad, I explained the research project, what was about, and the time commitment would be. At the same time, we also sent out a printed, easy to read flyer with the same information. So we started advertising in June 22, and we had our group finalised and ready to start in August 22. Our time frame was tight and we advertised 2 research projects together. Afterwards, we said that that wasn't a great idea and it caused a bit of confusion. So if you intend to do something similar, just make sure it doesn't clash with anything else. After meeting with me, 10 participants consented to be part of this project, and we were ready to start the classes in August 22. So for the next 8 weeks, the group met once a week. We had 2-hour classes, and we'll go into those in a bit more detail later. 9 people went on to complete the course. So what did we do? Well, the plan was to form a self-advocacy group focusing on accessibility. Once the 8 weeks were completed, the group had gained some of the knowledge and skills to become co-researchers on accessibility in their town. So for stage 2, we split into smaller groups of 3, made up of 2 co-researchers from the self-advocacy group and 1 other, which was either myself or another member of the project team. These small groups carried out reviews of how accessible shops and other commercial services are in Newbridge. For the final stage, we did accessibility reviews of public services, but we'll talk about that more later. So why Newbridge? Why did we choose Newbridge? Well, we chose it as a base for a number of reasons. With a large population, it's the biggest town in Kildare. It's a prosperous town with one of the largest retail shopping centres in Ireland outside the capital of Dublin. A large number of care service users travel to Newbridge regularly for shopping, eating and socialising, so there was a lot to gain from basing the project here in this large town. So I want to focus on the aim of the course. The aim was of the accessibility and communication skills was to give citizens of Newbridge with intellectual disabilities the knowledge, communication, research skills and confidence to speak out, to speak up on their rights to inclusion and accessibility in their town. The class took place in the same meeting room and care every week. They were 2 hours long and we took a short break after an hour. But if participants needed a break during the class, they were free to do so whenever they needed, because it was important that the environment was comfortable and flexible to suit everyone. We aimed for a structured but relaxed setting, so participants would look forward to coming back each week. So who joined the course? 9 people in total. That was 4 men and 5 women, an average age of 38. And as you can see, the majority lived with family. So 3 people were supported by, slide 9 now, 3 people were supported by communication partners who came along to the course with them. Their role was to support the person as they needed it throughout the course. The support was very individual. For example, one communication partner had the coursework in advance and would prepare with the course participant before each class. They would also review to reinforce learning if necessary after the class. They also supported me as the trainer to adapt my communication style as needed and gave me regular feedback. The communication partners also accompanied these 3 people to complete their accessibility reviews. The course was divided into 4 modules and 2 classes for each module. The first module introduced the group to self-advocacy and what it meant to be part of a self-advocacy group. We went on to cover the UNCRPD, what it stood for and how it impacts people with intellectual disabilities. The second module was where we focused on the UNCRPD Article 9, accessibility, so I'm going to go into more detail on that later. The public sector duty was also introduced. The public sector duty, it's an Irish government requirement that all publicly funded services are accessible to everybody, including people with disabilities. We cover this in the third module. We also taught people about the difference between public services and commercial services in terms of their rights. The work the participants produced during these modules was the foundation for the accessibility reviews that they would soon begin. The fourth module was about developing our communication skills, and Ciara is going to go into more detail on this later. You can see a list of the classes in full here. There were 2 classes in each module. In this presentation, we won't be able to cover all the classes, so we've picked out 3 to go into a little bit more detail. We'll talk about speaking up, speaking out, the UN CRPD, and communication and research skills. So first of all, we'll look at speaking up, speaking out. So this was our introductory class. We spent some time getting to know one another and just explaining the way the classes would be structured. It was important that everyone understood from the beginning that they were now part of an important group. They were going to impact positive improvements for people with disabilities in Newbridge. So as you can see on the slide, the class was about gaining understanding on what it means to be part of a self-advocacy group, and how being part of this group can support you to speak up for your rights. This was a really successful class, and the participants gave feedback that they enjoyed it and they were looking forward to coming back the next week. The different teaching methods worked well, and everyone contributed in a way that showed that they understood the topic. So you can see from the quote here, following the class, one person even felt empowered to go home and speak up about something that had been bothering them. Class 2 introduced the UNCRPD. So a small number of the class participants had heard of this before, but they were all quite unfamiliar with what it actually meant. The UNCRPD, it's a vast topic, so we put the focus on Article 9 accessibility because this was the most relevant to us. We produced a short video in Newbridge, which explained what good accessibility looked like, as well as supporting the understanding of Article 9. The video really grabbed the attention of the group because it featured people that they were familiar with in real life and in places that they see every day. This prompted people to start talking about accessibility barriers they were facing. We used the video throughout this class to point out accessibility features that were good, as well as those that could be improved on in Newbridge, and also to gain an understanding on that accessibility wasn't just about the physical structure of a building like ramps and automatic doors. It was important that we looked at signage and information and communication. Making our own short video that brought the UN CRPD into real life in the town that people lived in was a real success for us. I was able to keep the attention of the group while teaching something that can be really, really hard to understand. So I'm going to hand you over to Kieran now, who's going to tell you about how we taught the communication and research skills.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. The last module in the course focused on communication skills needed to carry out the reviews. Our aim for this module was to practice using the review forms that we designed to firstly carry out a visual accessibility review, which means to check if the building was accessible, and then to interview a manager in a role play. There are many ways to communicate, and we wanted to promote that when carrying out the reviews. We wanted to give everybody a chance to use their current communication skills, but also to learn new skills and improve on the skills they already have. To practice reviewing how accessible buildings are, we divided into 3 smaller groups and used the practice review form. This review form, which you can see on the slide, was very similar to the final review form that we used when reviewing commercial services, and we will show this final form to you a bit later. We used this practice review form shown here to review the Care Central Services building for accessibility. The participants had the chance to look for easy to read signs, assess the toilets, look for wheelchair parking, make sure the kitchen counters weren't too high, and so on. In our final class, the group got to meet with Deirdre Murphy, CEO of Care, to give their feedback from this review. The second part of this module involved the participants taking part in role plays to practice interviewing a manager, which they would later do as part of the public service reviews. We divided into groups of 3, a researcher, a co-researcher or course participant, and another member of the group who acted as a manager. Individuals had the chance to practice asking a manager questions using the easy to read form as their guide. These role plays didn't always go to plan. Some individuals preferred to practice on a one-to-one basis and not in a group setting, so this was facilitated as well. We needed to be mindful of the classroom style environment and the different skills and needs of the other people in the group. So we needed to consider sound levels, distractions in the room, how long people could hold their attention for, the need for breaks, and so on. The original plan for this module was for it to be completed in 1 to 2 classes, but in the end, the module ran over 3 classes with some individual sessions needed in between as well. We needed to be flexible, and we recommend that you do the same. In order to ensure everyone had the chance to take part in the interviews, no matter what communication style or skill level they have, individuals were supported to use different ways to communicate while taking part. So now we will see a video of Mary, who shares her experience of taking part in the course. After this video, I will hand you back over to Anne-Marie.
Hi, my name is Anne-Marie and I'm here today with Mary, who's a member of the Newbridge Self-Advocacy Group.
Hi, my name is Mary. Thank you very much for welcoming me.
Mary, do you want to tell us a bit, you're from Newbridge,
Yeah.
what's it like to live in Newbridge?
It's lovely because I used to work in Newbridge, and now I'm involved in a few bits in Newbridge now, and it's nice to live in Newbridge.
And last summer when you heard about the course that we were about to run in this project, how did you hear about it?
Well, I heard about it off my my planner, and she told me, and then we looked at a video,
Okay.
me and her, and then I came along and I met you, and then I had to fill in a form, and then I just came to the classes.
Yeah, and what was it about it that made you think, yeah, this is something I'd like to do?
Well, because I wanted to meet new friends, I wanted to make Newbridge more accessible, I wanted to do something, I want to try something different,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. So when we met, do you want to just describe, I suppose, what the class was like, what we did when we met?
Well, when I came here first, I was very, very nervous. It was nice to meet new friends and make new friends. And out of that, I still have a few friends. And we started to sort of role play a few times. We actually done worksheets as well, of how to do. We done videos on self-advocacy. We done acting on self-advocacy, how to go out in the community, and then we went out in the community as well.
Yeah.
So I think it was very good.
And then we remember when it came to the later stages of our course, we did a practice review. Do you want to tell a bit about how that went?
We done a practice review with different people to go out in the community.
But we did one, remember, in this?
Yeah, we done a practice one in care, and we went around with different people. Like there was 2 in each group. And we had to see what sort of access was, whether it was good or bad.
Yeah.
And we found a few things in care.
Yeah.
Which was...
And we invited the manager.
We invited the manager down, and she's after actually done a few changes already.
Yeah. So that was really positive.
That was very positive so far.
And did that help you? Did that make you feel more confident going out in the public then?
Yeah, that made me more comfortable to go out in the public.
Yeah, and speak to managers.
And speak to managers. And
have you enjoyed doing the course?
Yeah, and I would love to still do it if it's still going on.
Yeah. Why? What do you think why would you like to keep doing it? What more could we do?
Because you'll get more out of it, like, because you're always learning something new. It's not just, you still learn, like if you keep going at it, like you learn more every day. You don't stop learning from self-advocacy. You know, like it's all about like Newbridge. It's always about self-advocacy in Newbridge. It's not just Newbridge, it's still fancy all over.
Okay.
So you can never stop learning.
Yeah, yeah. And the things that we covered, do you remember in the classes about rights and the law, was this stuff that you knew about already?
No, I never knew any of those.
Yeah.
I never knew any of those laws and that. And I think if we did start doing the group again, we could look at more laws and where we can go from there and see can we make the laws better for the rights and the other ones as well.
Yeah.
See can we come up with different laws.
Because if it's about, you learned about the right to accessibility, we particularly looked at that part of the UNCRPD. Was that new to you, that there was a law in place?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that.
And we watched a video to learn about that. Was that a good way to learn?
Yeah, that was a very good way to learn.
Okay.
And I think there should be more sort of videos like that.
Right, well that's really helpful, Mary. Thanks a million for your time.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
We've heard from Mary's experience. Throughout the course, we gathered feedback from all participants. People gave feedback on how they found the course in 3 focus groups led by myself and Geraldine. One after 4 weeks, one at the end, and one when they had done some of the accessibility reviews. They had a lot to say. First, we asked people why they came to the course, and you can see in this first quote that one person talked about her rights and making changes to services in Newbridge. At the end of the course, another person knew why easy-to-read information was so important. A few people simply said that they liked coming to the course, and one person gestured with just a thumbs up. So what people valued most about the course was the chance to meet friends each week. All 9 expressed this. 3 people were shy, so they preferred to listen more than to talk. In the second quote, you can see that one person said they felt anxious when talking in class, but this person liked to meet friends and sometimes liked going to lunch after. We asked people, what should we change if we were running this course again? People loved learning about their rights and accessibility through watching videos, especially the ones that we made in Newbridge. We had made easy to read worksheets, which some people liked, but one person with visual impairments found our easy to read materials difficult to understand and wanted clearer pictures. Some wanted more time to practice what they'd learned before getting started on the accessibility reviews, as you can see from this quote. 2 people gestured thumbs up that they were happy and they didn't want any changes. Of course, there were challenges along the way. It was important to us that people with different ability levels were represented, but this did come with its challenges. When it came to sourcing and developing course material that's relevant and interesting to all. Class activities needed to be pitched at different levels and styles to suit all the participants. There was a lot of information available on UNCRPD, but sourcing the relevant material pitched at the right level proved to be really difficult, which is why we chose to design our own. Another maybe more obvious but time-consuming challenge, and it's worth mentioning, is the initial setup of the group. It takes a lot of time to advertise, meet people, ask for consent, and then get dates and times at a venue to suit everyone that would like to be included. So we learned a lot through this process about teaching self-advocacy and communication skills. The group responded really well to interactive activities, lively discussions, personal examples, getting up, moving around and watching short videos. We had times that we spent class time with the more traditional PowerPoint that included a lot of writing, and the group didn't respond well to this. They were bored and they really didn't engage well with it. One participant even considered not coming back after a class that included a small section of lecture, as she felt overwhelmed and tired. So I would recommend finding a spacious room to hold the class. The length of the course worked well, and 10 participants was really an ideal number. To keep a group with mixed abilities engaged, it's important to include a range of teaching methods, use lots of videos and music throughout. And it always helped to keep the atmosphere relaxed. The UN CRPD and the public sector duty, they're really heavy topics and they can be overwhelming. So it's best to pick out the most relevant points for this topic and include them in activities rather than teaching it as one big piece in a lecture style. We've written a training manual for this course, and the details on how you can get it will be included at the end of this webinar today. Thank you.
Hello again, everyone. Now we're going to have a question and answer session shortly. We'll be joined by Ciara, Mary, and Anne-Marie, who'll answer some short questions. We'll be having a second question and answer later, so we may not get to all of them now. The first thing I want to do is to show you the cover of our self-advocacy course training manual, and we really do have one for everyone in the audience. So I'm going to put a link now into the chat box where you can actually download that. Yeah, there it is there. Thanks, Ali. So I'll just put that link there, and you might like to take this out of the chat box and put it, maybe on a Word document or something like that, so you can take a look at that later. And so now some questions. I'm wondering, Noreen, if you can start us off with any questions that you might put to people from either the chat or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine. Thanks, Anne-Marie and Ciara. Great to hear about the course. Mary, could I go to you first? It was great to hear about your experience of the course. And could I ask you, Mary, was there any one thing you really liked about the course that you did?
Hold on a second.
Yeah, take your time. And in the meanwhile, if any of the audience have any specific questions about the course, you can put it into the chat box and we can see if we don't have much time at the moment, but we can come back to it again later.
Yes, I did actually. I enjoyed everything, and it was very interesting. And
I remember you said before, Mary, you talked about all the friends you made.
yeah, I made loads of friends as well.
So that was a part you enjoyed.
Yeah. When I did go, I liked the course. I liked meeting new friends and being out in the community. And Anne-Marie was very good with doing the course.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Mary.
Thank you.
Anne-Marie and Ciara, could I go to you? I mean, you talked about the different methods that you used on the course. Was there any one that you found particularly successful?
Yeah, definitely our use of videos. Like we did find the more videos we used, the more people engaged, and developing our own videos that were, like I said in the video, in Newbridge with people that the participants were familiar with, that really grabbed everyone's attention too. We also got a lot of our videos from Inclusion Ireland, and we were able to source a lot of relevant videos from clips from Inclusion Ireland. You might have something else to add, Ciara, to that.
Yeah, just the role plays worked really, really well. And the practice review that we did in the Care Central Services building, it just gave people the chance to experience what it would really be like when they went out to the commercial and public services, as it could be hard to imagine that in a classroom environment. So I think that worked really well to give people a chance to practice and get familiar with the process of it. But yeah, they were the two or the three things really that worked really well for us.
And the role plays are usually good fun as well.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
has a bit of fun and everybody can get involved. And I think doing it on a one-to-one basis helped as well, so that people had the option of whether to do it in the group setting or if they were more comfortable to have a chance to do it just in a one-to-one or a smaller group. So yeah, but it was fun overall. Get people a
Yeah.
chance to have fun.
Okay, thanks, Ciara and Anne-Marie. Don't see any questions specifically on the course. I see a comment here about how useful it is for people in the community to just think about how their service could be better for accessibility. So I would imagine that, yeah, it gets people in the shops and wherever, all the different places you went, to just really get them thinking seriously and to be reminded about how important it is.
Yeah. A question that has come through is from Catherine Kelly is, would you see this program being able to be modified for working with a teenage group?
Yeah, it wouldn't even really have to be modified. Like it could work as it is with a teenage group, you know. It's, yeah, definitely. It would work well with a teenage group.
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree. And the videos and everything, they would be accessible from all ages, really. So I think, as Emery said, I don't even think it would need to be modified for a younger group either. Yeah.
Okay, will I hand back to you, Geraldine, because we're keeping an eye on our time.
Please do. Okay, so now on to the second presentation. This one is titled, How Accessible Are Commercial Services in Newbridge? You'll be seeing another video featuring Mary and a video about the important topic of total communication, and that features Ciara along with Danny, Paul and Pather. So back to Ali now for that presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, myself and Ciara will be discussing how accessible commercial services are for people with intellectual disabilities. Our core question was, how can adults with intellectual disabilities be best supported to campaign for accessible commercial services within their locality? We also wanted to find out what are the most effective methods to achieve accessibility on many different levels in commercial services, from the physical layout of the building to information to customer care and customer experience. Firstly, we asked the self-advocates on the Advocacy and Accessibility course which shops and commercial services they used most in Newbridge Town. You can see here it was a varied list, totaling 9 services. So their list included 4 supermarkets, a chemist, a large shopping centre, a cinema, a clothing store and a coffee shop. So what did we do next? We wrote to the manager of each of the commercial services on our list. We gave them information on who we are and the unannounced accessibility reviews that we were planning to carry out. We invited them to be involved with the reviews if they wished. We didn't get any responses from managers who wished to get involved at this stage. We also asked a local newspaper to publish an article explaining who we were and what we were doing. So once we had all the relevant people informed, we split into small groups of 1 reviewer who was a member of the project team and 2 co-researchers who had just completed the self-advocacy course on accessibility. 3 co-researchers had communication partners to support them. Each person had an easy-to-read accessibility checklist form which we designed. The primary reviewer took responsibility for filling out the form and the 2 co-researchers would gather the information. So over the course of a few weeks, our teams of 3 visited all 9 commercial services to carry out accessibility reviews. On this slide, you can see one page from the review that we used in the commercial reviews. The co-researchers were involved with designing this form and in making sure it was accessible for them. You'll be able to download this in its full form from the Connecting Locally website at the end of this webinar. So let's move on to our findings. We first looked at how accessible main entrances are for a person using a wheelchair or mobility aid. In general, it was all really positive, and it was clear that most services have put in effort into making their entrances accessible. We are really pleased to report that all 9 of the services had proper accessible parking really close to the entrance, and all but one had an accessible entrance, including a flat, wide pathway and which led to automatic doors. However, for one service, the main entrance was not accessible for a person using a wheelchair or a mobility aid. 2 sets of heavy doors meant someone in a wheelchair would need to wait and ask for assistance to enter and exit this building. So next, we'll have a look at safety in commercial services. We really wanted to see how safe people felt when they were out and about in commercial services. So we asked our co-researchers if they felt safe in different services, and if they didn't, would they know what to do to ask for help? The question was difficult for some co-researchers to understand, but 7 reported or showed through their body language that they did feel safe when they were out in services. 2 people felt uncomfortable to go out to a particular service without staff with them. And 1 person said they would go to a security guard if they felt unsafe or if they needed help. We went on to focus on the accessibility inside the buildings. So how easy was it to move around and to use the service independently? On the positive side, our co-researchers reported that 7 of the 9 stores were really well laid out and easy to move around. They had wide aisles and an elevator between floors where needed. However, in one really busy retail unit, there was only 1 elevator. So this was also used by parents pushing buggies, people with mobility aids, and other wheelchair users. So it led to a long waiting time. There were other issues too. For example, in 2 commercial services, our review teams spotted a lot of clutter in the aisles, which made it extremely difficult to move around freely if you were using a wheelchair. 2 services had seating areas for people with disabilities, but this meant that they were restricted to sitting only in the designated areas. 1 service offers free mobility scooters and motorised wheelchairs to customers, but the hours when they're available are very limited. And there's also paperwork involved in the registration, so this could be a barrier for many people with intellectual disabilities. If we move on now to bathrooms, 6 stores had accessible toilets for customer use. 2 more had accessible toilets, but they were a 3-minute distance away on an upper level, which involved waiting for a free elevator. 1 store had no bathroom for any customers. Overall, over half of the toilets had multiple accessibility problems. Some didn't have enough turning space inside or no grab rail. You can see that from the list here that while shops may say they have an accessible bathroom, they are far from perfect. For example, 1 person couldn't reach the lock on the bathroom door, and she had to ask her co-reviewer to stand guard outside the door to protect her privacy. And another person had to ask for the door of the bathroom to be open for her so she could get in and out, because it was a heavy fire door which is fitted with a spring. Our review teams identified a number of things that needs to be fixed before people with wheelchairs would be able to use them independently. Our co-researchers tested whether general signage designed for all customers in the store was accessible for them. Just under half could understand some of the general customer signage that contained 1 or 2 words at most. For example, men, ladies, beauty. Signs that were easiest to understand had single words and pictures combined, such as lift, toilets, or fire exit. These were the co-researchers that could read. For co-researchers who cannot read or who have poor sight, signs for customers with text only that aren't accompanied by pictures presented a barrier. Only 1 commercial outlet had an easy-to-read snack menu that was understood by our co-researchers. 4 had no easy-to-read signage at all. 4 had some signs with symbols or pictures, but when we looked closer at them, they weren't user-friendly. The maps to guide you around the store were overly detailed and confusing. And menus with pictures are a great customer feature, but too many pictures with too much text becomes cluttered and it's not easy to read. Symbols featured a lot too. For example, 1 store has a large visible list of services available, and each heading has a symbol. The problem for our co-researchers was that most of these symbols are unrecognisable. whereas real pictures are more familiar and they give you a clearer message. We'll introduce Mary now. Mary is going to share her experience as a co-researcher.
So Mary, thanks for coming today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about thanks the commercial services. When we finished the class, the 8 weeks of the class, we went out in small groups and did reviews of commercial services and public services in Newbridge. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe the things you looked at when you were doing your review?
Well, what we looked at the park and moving around, the toilets, the staff, helpful, easy reading, the jam card I use a lot of, and feeling safe.
Okay. And so you first did your commercial service?
Yes.
Do you want to just describe what that was like?
The commercial service, we went in and we looked around everywhere. And we noticed that there was an awful lot of things that they shouldn't be there for wheelchairs, and very high up, that they were all messy as well, and there were people that was in wheelchairs and blind, or evenly any sort of people that who has any sort of disability, you know, couldn't reach up like to get anything, but they were very messy as well.
And what would they do in that situation if you were, say, a wheelchair user and you know you needed help? What would be the situation?
Well, you know, because when we were looking around, there was very little staff, like, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
when you finished the review, how did you feel? How did you feel about it? Did you feel you could have done things differently?
yeah, I could have done something differently, because when I went in, I was very nervous. I didn't get what do you call it? I could have practiced.
Yeah.
If I got practice, I could have done it, like, you know.
Okay.
I felt very nervous going in.
Yeah.
You know.
Because we had practiced as part of the course, but there was a bit of a gap, wasn't there?
Yeah, we practiced it, but I think it was 6 to 8 weeks before we went out and done it.
Okay.
And I think if me and that other person sat down and just went through the form, like, and practice it, I think it would have been, wouldn't have been as much nervous as what I was.
Yeah. So then we went out after that to the commercial service. No, we went to the public service.
Yeah.
So we did that differently. Do you want to explain the process for that one?
The public. Well, the public one was, we went out and
we met first, didn't we?
We met first, and what we did was we met in a coffee shop. And what we did was we met and we went through the 5 pictures, the likes of this, right, for the easy to read, and we went through that and we went through what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And then what we then did is we went and met the people that day.
Yeah. So it was fresh.
So it was fresh in my head.
And on the way in, so say when we arrived at
on the way in, I came across a few things, what was good and what was bad.
Okay, so what were a few of those things?
But the signs weren't very good.
On the notice board or
On the
something?
notice board wasn't very good.
What was bad about it?
They were all very small, so like if they had, say, pictures on, they could, people who couldn't read or write would notice the pictures.
Yeah.
You know?
It was a bit cluttered.
It was a bit cluttered as well.
Yeah. So when we met with the manager, did you talk about this kind of thing?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. So throughout the whole process, what kind of things have you learned? Like after doing all of this, your class and your reviews of commercial services and public services, what have you learned over the last few months?
Well, I've learned that I was very shy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned that to come out myself. I've learned to take my time. I've learned to listen to people.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to listen to others.
Yeah.
I've learned to
For doing the reviews.
to do reviews. I learned to learn how to do the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned how to plan.
Okay.
I've learned how to make time for myself,
Okay.
which I wouldn't never done before.
Okay. So to
No.
manage your time.
To manage my time.
And about accessibility, you know, what about accessibility now?
Well,
Are you more aware? Or?
yeah, I would actually go into shops now and any place, restaurants or anywhere, and I would notice things where I never noticed before, like,
Yeah.
you know, or in the public, like, I would see some people going into car parks now, into wheelchair car parks, and they shouldn't be,
Yeah.
you know, and I said, Jean, I said, for fuck's sake, why are you there down in there?
Okay. Yeah.
Didn't
You know
put
it's
that
not
behind.
right. And what the skills that you've gained, so you've managing your time and everything like
Yeah.
that, and for accessibility, you know, you're talking about all the wheelchair, the accessibility, the spaces and
Yeah.
ramps. And is there anything else? It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, there's more than that. There's people should be all different disabilities or even learning disabilities should all try to get together and make a better community.
Mm-hmm.
Like around Newbridge now, there's I'm seeing potholes and things like that. Even if our person with an ordinary disability walking down the street and didn't see it, a big pothole,
Yeah.
they could fall and break their neck.
Yeah.
You know.
And what have you learned what to do about that? If you do.
I've learned to just try and speak up,
Yeah.
like trying to make a phone call to the council, or
Yeah.
I never wrote a letter, but I never complained like that before. But I would like to try and get someone to show me how to do that.
Yeah. You're
You know?
ready for the next step.
I'm ready for the next step.
All right. Thanks a million, Mary. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Mary told us how important it is to speak up. The way staff interact with customers has an impact on accessibility. To review customer service, the co-researchers asked for help in each commercial service we reviewed. Overall, staff were extremely willing to help, and the co-researchers reported having a very positive experience in this area. Only 1 out of 9 had a negative experience where they couldn't get the staff's attention because they were busy on their phone. So as part of the review of customer service, co-researchers used different modes or different types of communication as well as speech. Ciara is going to talk to you now about that.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. These different types of communication are known as alternative and augmentative modes of communication, or AAC. Some examples of augmentative and alternative communication are pictures, communication devices, communication books, sign language, body language, and so on. So why did we promote and use AAC within these reviews? So we used AAC for a number of reasons. Encouraging and accepting lots of different types of communication helped people who typically use these different types of communication and don't just use speech to take part in the course and in the reviews. It also gave us the chance to find out how individuals using different ways to communicate in commercial services would work. How would staff in shops react to people using pictures or a communication device to ask for help instead of using their speech? What we found was that through supporting co-researchers to use different types of communication when carrying out the reviews, for example, when asking for help or when at the till, we ended up encouraging the use of different types of communication in these settings. Local staff in the retail shops learned from our co-researchers who were using AAC. Through using AAC or different types of communication, we are also encouraging the use of a total communication approach. So total communication is an approach which includes and values all types of communication equally. So non-verbal communication, or ways to communicate without your speech, so for example, body language, gestures, pictures, these are valued just as much as speech or verbal language. This approach to communication is recognised and encouraged all around the world. Some co-researchers tested out using a jam card when asking for help. Jam cards were developed in Northern Ireland, and JAM stands for just a minute. The idea of using a jam card is to highlight to staff that you have an intellectual disability and require a little bit more time. One of the co-researchers said that she likes using the jam card because she often feels rushed when at the till when she's trying to get her money out and organise herself. But if she shows the jam card, the staff are more patient with her and then she feels less anxious. Individual staff in 5 of the stores we reviewed were unfamiliar with the card and were confused at first. But once they read the card, they were very helpful and made a visible effort to slow down their communication. Some co-researchers used pictures to ask for help. These co-researchers used pictures of food or drink to ask where certain items were located. So for example, one person asked where the bread was in the shop by showing a member of staff a picture of bread. We tested using pictures to communicate in 3 stores, and individual staff in all 3 stores were very helpful and reacted very well to people using pictures to communicate. One co-researcher used a communication device to ask for help, and this co-researcher used TD Snap communication software on an iPad to ask for help in the store. This type of communication involves a person using an electronic device. The tablet or the iPad will speak a message out loud for the person. This was tested in 2 stores. In one store, staff reacted very well to the use of the iPad and they were really helpful to the co-researcher. And in the second store, the staff member appeared to be unfamiliar with this type of communication. When they were asked for help, the staff member pointed to an aisle in the store and walked away. And this was not helpful to our co-researcher in this case. Now we will show you a video that features Danny, Paul and Patter, who will show you how they use different types of communication when doing their reviews.
Hello everyone, my name is Ciara Byrne and I am a speech and language therapist here in Care. My role within the Connecting Locally Research Project involves supporting individuals who use alternative and augmentative modes of communication, or AAC, to participate actively as co-researchers. Augmentative or alternative communication means all of the ways that somebody communicates except for their speech. Augmentative means to add to someone's speech. Alternative means to be used instead of someone's speech. As part of this role, I supported the facilitation of the self-advocacy course with a particular focus on empowering individuals with different communication needs or styles to carry out accessibility reviews on public and commercial services. As an SLT, most individuals that I support who use alternative or augmentative modes of communication typically experience communication breakdowns or barriers when in their local neighbourhoods interacting with unfamiliar communication partners. For example, when talking to a staff member at a till or when ordering food at a deli. By taking part in this project, these individuals had the opportunity to independently communicate and to build connections in their local neighbourhood. It has also promoted the importance of recognising and using alternative and augmentative modes of communication. Before getting started on the accessibility reviews, members of the self-advocacy course were facilitated by Anne-Marie and I to prepare questions and ask these questions using a role-play situation. These role plays gave the members of the group an opportunity to practice carrying out a walk-around accessibility review and also to practice their interview skills. These role plays were particularly useful for participants who have different communication needs or styles. As part of these accessibility reviews, members of the self-advocacy course tested whether alternative modes of communication could be used by co-researchers in public and commercial services in their town. People on the course are customers in these shops and services that we reviewed. We wanted to find out how the retail and public services staff would respond to people communicating in different ways. These co-researchers were Pater, Paul and Danny, who are going to introduce themselves now.
Hi everyone, my name is Pater. As part of my review of a public and commercial service, I use a jam card to ask staff in the supermarket to help.
And what is your name?
Paul.
And did you use pictures, Paul?
Yeah, I do. Jordan. Danny. And what did you use? Well,
I used a communication device.
We are now going to show you a demonstration of how Pater, Paul and Danny used alternative and augmentative modes of communication to communicate with retail staff as part of the accessibility review. Pater...
What are you looking for? The toilet? Yeah, just down there. What have you got there? Lexi? Oh, jam card. Yeah, I'll show you where the bathroom is. Do you want to follow me? This way. This way.
Next, you will see Paul doing his accessibility review. Paul showed how someone can use pictures to express themselves. Paul used pictures to ask staff where the bread was.
Are you okay? For something?
yeah.
What are you looking for?
There.
The bread. The bread is down this way. Will I show you?
Next, you will see Danny doing his accessibility review. Danny showed staff how a communication device can help someone to express themselves. Danny used a communication device to ask staff where the yogurts were in store.
My name is Danny.
Hi, Danny.
Where is the yogurt? Where is the yogurt?
The yogurts are down this way. I'll show you. What flavour yogurt would you like? What flavour? Strawberry. It's up here. There you go.
Using alternative and augmentative modes of communication, Pater, Paul and Danny showed how individuals can independently interact with people in their neighbourhoods. Other research shows that some shop assistants want to talk to the person who is with the customer with an intellectual disability. Our co-researchers proved that you don't always need family members or support staff to speak for you in public, if you are shy or if sometimes strangers don't understand you. Pater, Paul and Danny got excellent responses from most retail staff members in the 3 shops that we reviewed. They also demonstrated the importance of a good communication partner and being open to using alternative ways of communication. Total communication is an approach which involves using and accepting all types of communication equally, not just speech or verbal language. This approach to communication is internationally recognised and encouraged. Through adopting a total communication approach, commercial and public services will be more inclusive and accessible for all. The physical environment is only one dimension of accessibility. Shop assistants and public service staff need to be prepared for people with a range of communication styles, modes of communication and communication needs among their clientele for the service to be truly accessible for all.
Danny, Paul and Patter showed us how they use different forms of communication to carry out their reviews. They showed how people who have lived experience of using different ways to communicate can be included in a self-advocacy course and can become co-researchers. Now I will hand you back to Anne-Marie, who's going to talk to you about what happened after the reviews.
So what about giving feedback to managers about accessibility in their service? 2 managers from commercial services took us up on our offer to meet with us after the review to give feedback on what we found. Pennies, internationally known as Primark, invited us to their national headquarters building in Dublin to give feedback on the accessibility review of their Newbridge shop. Myself and the 2 co-researchers who carried out the review met with their corporate social responsibility manager. This was a new experience for us all. They were very keen to hear from the Newbridge self-advocates about their customer experience for people with intellectual disabilities in their local store. We gave a presentation to them on what worked well in the Newbridge Pennies shop. We also presented the improvements that were needed. So we're pleased that they made some improvements very quickly in the shop in Newbridge. Well signposted accessible tills and large pictures identifying the beauty area. This is just a start for them. They've committed to continue to improve their shopping experience for people with intellectual disabilities. Pennies recently launched a new online shop, which has lots of pictures and less writing. They have developed a social story to help people to prepare for their shopping trip. While 7 shops chose not to meet with us, we were very encouraged by this response from Pennies. It's possible for people with intellectual disabilities to influence improving accessibility locally, but it takes a long time. Some commercial services are very interested in providing a better service for customers with disabilities. What we do know is that commercial services often adopt what other businesses are doing, and we intend to continue to campaign for improving accessibility over time. This project wouldn't have been possible without the input of a large group of people who are all named here. A special thank you to our co-presenters, Mary, Michelle, Danny, Paul and Patter, and of course all the staff that supported them in the background.
And now we're going to have a very short opportunity for you to contribute. So I'm going to hand over to Noreen now, and Ali is going to display some questions that we'd like to ask you. We won't be able to take very detailed feedback just because of time, but we're keen to hear about your experiences as well. So over to Noreen.
Thanks, Geraldine. Maybe before we get the audience to give us their views or any questions, could I come back to Mary? Mary, it's great to see those videos in action, and I'm sure it'll encourage lots of us now to consider doing similar reviews. But in your video, Mary, you said you were nervous before going out to do the review in Newbridge, and I wondered, you know, if there's people now listening and watching this, and they might think, gosh, I might go out and do a similar review. What advice would you give them, Mary, if they were thinking about it? Or tell us how you overcame your own. You were nervous at first, were you?
Yeah, yes. the advice I would give them in the review before they go out, I would practice.
Practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that helped a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very good practical advice, Mary.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mary, and well done again.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll see up on the screen there that Ali has put up. We just want to hear your voice now, and we can only do this for a couple of minutes because we're watching our time. So just thinking about your own local area, how accessible are the services and shops for people with intellectual disabilities where you live? And here we're talking about the post office, the library, you know, swimming pool, all those services we use on a daily basis. So maybe first, just a bit of a brainstorm. So what works well in terms of accessibility? And if you just want to put up your comments and we'll have a quick run through them, and then also look at what are the challenges or what's difficult for you as a customer in terms of accessibility. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, I see here they're generally better in smaller shops than larger supermarkets. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense because in larger supermarkets, they're a lot busier. And of course, again, being rural, I suppose that's where people know each other. It helps also. Most of the people we support are known in their local shops. So I suppose relationships have developed, and that makes a big difference. I suppose that came through certainly in the shops in Newbridge, and some of them where I suppose people became familiar with those that need that extra bit of support. Lots of really positive comments on the overall presentation. People finding it really useful and inspiring. Someone here is saying it needs to be more accessible for wheelchair users. Yeah, I'd say that's very common in a lot of areas. So I think, yeah, the checkouts can be very small for the large. Yeah, I think that's where you have some of the motorized wheelchairs. You find that space is an issue. Counters, yes, the height is another issue. So I can see lots of challenges here for people in wheelchair, for wheelchair users, in terms of the height of checkouts. It's a bit like the ATMs, isn't it? Where when you want to withdraw money. Major lack of footpaths in Connemara. I can relate to that in Sligo. Big problem with in the rural parts of the county where it's not safe. Presentation is great, wheelchair users difficult, and some of our service users use mobile scooters. Oh, great. The DART, big issue with the DART, not accessible, no automatic ramps. And of course, it was great to see the different kinds of communication. Somebody here commenting on that, great idea to have the pictures and all those other different forms of communication and the difference it can make. Okay, so will I hand you back there, Geraldine, hand back to you. Thanks for all those comments, everybody.
Excellent. That's really great. Now we'd like to go on to the third presentation on how accessible are public services in Newbridge. I'll be starting out on this presentation, and we'll be talking about what we'd be recommending overall in terms of this study. Halfway through this presentation, you'll hear the voice of another co-researcher whose name is Michelle, and Michelle will be talking about her very personal experiences of accessibility in Newbridge. So remember to keep posting your questions as we go along in the chat box as you're listening. We'll have a short Q&A time to finish the webinar today. Thanks. Okay, Ali, back to you. Hi, I'm Geraldine Boland. Now I'm going to focus on how accessible public services are for people with intellectual disability. These are early results of a study that we carried out in Newbridge. So this was our research question. We were interested in how the individuals who were graduates of the self-advocacy course could be best supported to campaign for accessible public services within their town. Now, public service is any service that's funded by the government. And here's a couple of examples that you'd be very familiar with. This isn't a full list, but it gives you an idea. So you may have heard about the Irish public sector duty, and I've put this slide up just to give you a summary. Many countries have this type of requirement, and public services are expected to promote equality for all marginalised groups and to protect customers' human rights. And I've put this up so that there's a link here where if people want to find out more about the public sector duty, including free training, courses and full information. So essentially what's relevant to this research is that public sector service managers are expected to have a structured process for consulting people with disabilities about how that service can be improved. So what was our methodology in this study? And what did we do? We first identified what public services 9 self-advocates on their own self-advocacy course, what were the ones they used most within the town of Newbridge? And they identified 10 public services. We sent these 10 public service managers an information pack and invited them all to ask us along to do an interview with them. 7 out of the 10 managers consented to take part in the research, and we had an easy to read information checklist and an interview guide for our co-researchers. We asked all the managers the same questions. There was 23 in total. I won't be going into them all, but the team of 3 shared out those questions between them. So we'll give you these early results, and we did mention to the manager that we'd be doing a walking stroke wheeling around the building, so that physical accessibility check, that was part of the interview. And we did do a follow-up letter and indeed a meeting with the 7 managers, letting them know what our recommendations were. So 7 managers were interviewed. There's that I mentioned about the questions and the walking around. So what were our results? What we found was actually quite similar to the commercial services in Newbridge, but there were some clear differences too. Generally speaking, parking places, toilets, front doors, they generally worked well. All bar 2 of the front doors. Unfortunately, those 2 were quite heavy and therefore couldn't be opened independently by our reviewer who uses a wheelchair. Then there were particular problems. There was old buildings, and one of those had no lift, and one had a steep ramp inside the building going from one level to another, and this was a problem for our co-researchers. Some of our reviewers found it hard to move around inside those old buildings, and there was again the issue of the heavy doors. Even though with new and recently refurbished buildings, there were heavy internal fire doors, including heavy doors into accessible toilets. And that certainly would present a difficulty for independent use. Key finding here in this study is that none of the public services that we visited had easy to read information or accessible information videos. This includes signage, policies, complaints procedure form, information leaflets, and indeed websites. Managers said, well, the person can always ask staff for help, but we didn't see any easy to read poster at the reception desk that said that. One service featured the jam card at reception, but not everybody carries that card, you know. So a few managers mentioned that they were beginning to look at their websites And a way that those websites were going to be a way of maybe providing accessible information. So they were beginning to think about that, and perhaps people listening to their policies and audio of their policies, but no accessible information about your service for customers with intellectual disability. This is the result that stood out most. We also asked about staff education and had staff been trained in the public sector duty. Now, less than half had. And again, less than half had done some type of ability or disability awareness education as part of customer service education. And as you can see from this quote, one service, well, they hadn't done actually ability awareness education, but they had done general customer service training. And the manager said their staff were aware of the need to come out from behind the desk and interact with people directly. So Irish public services are expected to aim for a target of 6% for people with disability as employees, and one service met this target out of 7. The quote here is actually from a co-researcher. This person believed that while they themselves mightn't be able to apply for many of the jobs that was in this particular public service that they were reviewing, this person could see other possibilities, and you can see there's plenty of other work that people with disabilities could do here, like computers, etc. So Irish the public sector duty requires that customers with disabilities are consulted as a group about service accessibility, and 6 out of 7 managers gave examples of how this was done informally with existing customers with disability, including those with sensory disabilities. And one of the 7 managers interviewed had a local service accessibility committee. All said that they would continue these informal discussions one-to-one with customers with disabilities, and they were certainly open to hearing how things could be improved. We asked, were there any changes that you, the manager, believe need to be made to improve accessibility? And all 7 said yes, that there were. They could see that there were changes. One of the 7 had a definite action plan regarding accessibility. And in fact, it was a multi-annual plan. It was one that had been progressively added to over recent years. And then the research process with, the reviews that we did, that did begin to build on the manager's knowledge, the knowledge they already had. And it certainly underlined that accessibility is broad for individuals. And with people with intellectual disability, there are many dimensions, to that accessibility. And research that I've reviewed talks about the concept of multi-dimensional accessibility, meaning it's not one size fits all. Accessibility means a range of adaptations and accommodations, and it needs to be individualized for some people. So now I'm very pleased to show you a short video of Michelle's experience. And this is Michelle's experience of accessibility in her own town. And Michelle also shares with us what it's like to meet a manager after the review and to make recommendations about the kind of changes that will make a difference to her life as a customer of commercial and public services.
Hi, my name is Anne-Marie and I'm here today with Michelle. Michelle, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Michelle, I live in Newbridge, and the paths is not good. They're bumpy. Well, all the paths up there is bumpy. Around that corner, around the corner, it's all bumpy.
And to get to the shops and things like that, do you have to go through the bumpy paths?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's it like for you in a wheelchair, wheeling around Newbridge?
Well, I need a guidance. What is that?
Yeah, you need guidance.
I need guidance. So this my wheelchair is not a what's it called?
Motorised.
It's not a motorised wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's just an ordinary wheelchair.
Yeah, so that makes it hard.
Yeah.
Are you able to go anywhere on your own?
No.
Why?
I'd love to go on my own.
Would you? And you
And
cannot?
when you go in the toilet, I'm
Yeah.
going to go on my own, so it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Bringing people in.
Yeah, yeah. But so you'd like to be more independent?
So I'd love to be independent.
If you went out to try and wheel around Newbridge on your own,
No.
what would happen? Would you get stuck, or what would happen?
I go near the bad, the bad,
A bad bit of path, yeah?
it's a tip.
Oh, will you tip back, would you? Did that ever happen to you?
No.
No. You feel like you would though?
Yeah.
And did anything ever happen when you were out around Newbridge that you felt like did anything happen that you tipped out of your chair, or you fell forward?
I fell forward. Two of us, me and
Somebody
up
else?
there.
Yeah.
Fell with no names.
Yeah, yeah.
And she fell out.
All right. Why? What was happening with the path at that stage?
Just a bad step.
All right.
I fell out. She fell out.
Okay. Was this recently?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there anything good in Newbridge around?
No.
What about up around where the shops are? Are the paths any better up there when you get close to the shops?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Round Pennies is good.
Yeah, it's good up there, is it? Okay, and if you go a bit further. And down around here, is there ramps to get in places? Some shops have ramps, do
Yeah,
they?
some shops.
Yeah. And can you manage the ramps?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about doors? Do you ever have a problem with doors getting into buildings, or are all the buildings quite accessible?
Can I say?
We won't say the names of places, but is there any? Have you ever had trouble getting in places?
There are heavy doors.
Yeah.
Up near out somewhere.
Okay.
There are heavy doors, and
Yeah.
there's two double doors.
Is there any other examples that we can think of for accessibility that would make life easier for you? What do you think getting around Newbridge?
They'll fix the paths and I'll be able to get around. Me and up there, they'll get around God with.
Yeah, the other friends that you have. Yeah, that you'd be able to get around if that was fixed and more ramps. Remember, Michelle, you went out, and as part of our advocacy group, we reviewed commercial services and public services. And you went out in a team and you did this review. Do you remember that it looked something like this?
Yeah.
To review a commercial service and a public service in Newbridge. What were some of the good points that you found when you were out doing your review?
I was parking, I went to somewhere to park, and I was outside, outside the window.
Right outside, so that was good. And what about for getting inside?
You press button.
Okay, which is you like to do, don't you?
Yeah.
So you could press a button and that
Yeah,
would...
it could have a button there somewhere.
Yeah. And so inside when you went in, the bathrooms were quite good in there, were they? Or
Yeah.
can you tell me what they were like?
It had got a motor in go up or down.
What, the sink? You could move up and down? That was good, wasn't it? Yeah. So Michelle, remember myself and yourself went out and we did an accessibility review in a commercial service in Newbridge.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Like I wanted it, so I went there so to see the manager.
You went to see the manager, yeah. And how did that go?
Good.
Okay. What kind of things did you tell her?
I told her I need a ramp. That I need the doors are too heavy.
Yeah.
And two double doors I can't push.
Yeah.
So I need buttons.
Yeah. You told her all of that?
Yeah. She do her best.
Okay. Was it worth going to see the manager and talking to her?
And she said she do her best.
Okay. Okay, so it's always good to ask.
You know, if you don't ask, you won't get.
That's exactly it, yeah.
So Michelle's experience is striking, isn't it? And, you know, she is hopeful as a co-researcher and somebody living in the town of Newbridge that accessibility will change in her hometown. So now let's answer the question, how accessible is Newbridge town for adults with intellectual disability? Well, our research shows that the commercial and public services are not fully accessible for people with intellectual disabilities. Now, participatory action research, that's about empowerment and bringing about change. So let's look then at what's needed and what our co-researchers emphasised. Newbridge managers told us that there's been some definite investment in, we'll call it the physical accessibility. That's accessibility for wheelchair users and for people whose only disability is a mobility challenge. And we know from the reviews in commercial services and in some public services that even that accessibility of the physical environment and buildings, that needs some attention. In the earlier presentation on commercial services, we can see that there are toilets in shops that are labelled accessible, but they're not accessible. Really, they need quite a bit of maintenance actually and attention to make them fully and reliably accessible. What is clear as our overall finding is that when we talk about accessibility, the majority of the people that we met and those that we interviewed, they would understand that as really in the main being about physical accessibility. But as we know, accessibility, as we said, it's multidimensional and it's much more than automatic doors, parking, toilets and ramps. So our research team believes that Newbridge actually has the potential to lead the way on accessible information that includes signage, policies, forms, information and websites, and indeed complaints procedures. These are the key areas. Perhaps not every policy that your service has written needs to be an easy read, but some key ones do need to have an accessible version. And what we'd highly recommend is using short information videos to get across the key information that you need to communicate about your service. So what's that? What do you offer? How much does it cost? What do people need to know before they arrive? And we have found, and CARE has identified through its consultations with a wide group of service users, that the main way that people want to receive their information is through video. And that reflects, I guess, the broader society as well. As you can see, we've done a lot of our advertising for this research by making short videos. And we recommend that commercial and public services in the town make information accessible through short videos. We've seen some very positive signs, and in total we completed 16 accessibility reviews between shops, leisure services, and the 7 public services that we reviewed. And they were enthusiastic about making improvements based on our recommendations. Now, some are more enthusiastic than others, but some public services want to form panels of customers with disabilities. And the quote here states how open most of them are. So some recommendations now. In a couple of the reviews, it was identified that there was a national access officer, but that national officer was sitting in a national office, that was remote from the service that our citizens of Newbridge were using. And we recommend in local services that a staff member becomes a local disability access officer in each public service building. There are some very small changes that don't need a national approval, that can easily be remedied. And we'd like to see that expertise sitting locally and that commitment also. We also recommend that all staff in public service would receive tailored education on the public sector duty and what their responsibilities are with regard to that. And there are free short online courses that staff can do. Then we recommend education for access officers in creating accessible forms, those information videos I mentioned, as well as making those your websites accessible. That's a key part of the jigsaw of what's needed in order to achieve the changes that we're talking about. We're more than aware that the public sector duty is quite broad in its reach in terms of the range of people that need to have accommodation and whose needs as customers need to be understood and responded to. So we understand that, and there's a willingness certainly on the part of service providers to help out with that. Now, about financing the change, one public service manager pessimistically said that, well, the budget is quite tight for these kind of changes. But others, and you can see in the quote here, they've some experience with regard to the financing. And this comes from the manager who had a multi-annual plan. And they said, well, you can't do it all at once. And you have to budget for accessibility changes and see what you can do this year and then next year. The customer panels will help you to prioritize what's most important to them. This particular public service in the quote here, they were very proactive on getting grants to achieve very large changes to their building. Big changes definitely may need those once-off grants. And there's no doubt, but self-advocacy courses, they're labour intensive and they require, if they're to be inclusive of all, as ours was, that requires dedicated funding. Now, to conclude, our team, would recommend that when people graduate from a self-advocacy course, that they're prepared and have learned the skills of reviewing and accessibility and speaking out. We recommend, that people would be paid. I'll just pop back to the previous slide, it's on the bottom here. We'd recommend that they be paid and that they be paid for the hours they spend completing reviews. They're dedicating their time to provide their lived experience as expertise that'll help to inform the changes that services need to make. And payment for that time spent completing the reviews, that would really recognise and value that contribution. In the review I completed, I could not see how I'd have done that review without the two co-researchers. So they're really essential to the success and the richness of those reviews. So our research question included, what are the most effective ways to campaign to improve accessibility? And some people listening may not have done a self-advocacy course yet. We didn't test in this study, but individuals or groups, can make a formal complaint, and that's worth considering. Ask for the support you need to make that complaint in writing. And, public bodies may well say, well, we've had no formal complaints, so how do we know how many people that this issue affects and that it should be a priority for funding? In a study I did in 2019, a service leader told me, and this is a good example, a group of people with intellectual disability campaigned to get a local bus stop moved. It was too far away from where they lived and the road wasn't safe. So they were successful, so think about joining a self-advocacy group to improve accessibility where you live. And there's absolutely no doubt co-researchers with a disability, they're key to campaigning on accessibility. And this isn't a new finding, but our study really shows the power of people like Michelle, Mary, Danny, Paul, Padder, and those are the 5 who chose to, make videos about their experience. There's another 4 who also made a valued contribution, and that's Emma, Niamh, Julianne, and John. So thank you to you all. This contribution was invaluable. The research process that we came up with, that worked extremely well, and we'd recommend it as a model that could be used in campaigns. A team of 3 with 2 co-researchers with their expertise, and the lead researcher who looks after the paperwork, does the logistics, and makes sure that everything runs smoothly. They link with the manager in advance, etc. We think that's quite a good model, and you know, we are happy that that kind of, in a way, proved a partnership approach. Certainly, we can't run enough rights and self-advocacy courses on a range of topics. This course specifically focused on accessibility, and the co-researchers told us that they found the whole process quite new, and they were nervous. They needed a lot of support. They wanted a lot of practice, and they took it very seriously. So those courses really are invaluable, and certainly a key plank for campaigning for changes. So think about joining a self-advocacy course, and if you're a staff member or a family member or service leader, well, think about, when will the next self-advocacy course begin? And I mentioned partnership. Our deliberate, intentional approach was to work in partnership with the managers, both the commercial and the public service managers. When we went in to do reviews, and we would recommend this, we intentionally focused as much on the positives. What was right? What had been achieved already? What was working well? Now, why is that? Well, we wanted services to keep doing what's working well. Then we focused on barriers, problems, and things that could be improved. This quote from a manager is now on the wall in my office as an inspiration from somebody who didn't fully understand easy to read, didn't know about the public sector duty in all of its detail. But this person was absolutely uplifted by the experience of completing an accessibility review in partnership with the team of 3. So I'll close out now on that recommendation about working in partnership. So here are some references for people who like to do follow-up reading. And here are some people to thank. I've already thanked the 9 participants, co-researchers, the Newbridge town managers who gave their time to take part in the study, and Inclusion Ireland for their access to their accessible review materials, which we then adapted further and built on. And thank you for your interest in the topics of self-advocacy and accessibility. So now back to our full panel, and Noreen, over to you. Are there any questions that are coming up for people, or comments that are relevant? And perhaps our panel members might now answer those.
Yeah, not immediately, Geraldine. So this is your last chance now. If people have any specific questions, maybe put particularly to Ciara and Anne-Marie, who are so involved in rolling out this project. It's fantastic. It's such great to have a model, you know, for any services and self-advocacy groups now thinking of doing something similar. There are a couple of I see, Geraldine, you put up the trainer's manual. The link is there.
Indeed. And Noreen, may I take this moment to ask you, because you're heavily involved in self-advocacy yourself, what can you talk a little bit in summary about the self-advocacy groups that are active and being supported by Inclusion Ireland?
Yeah, sure. We talked about it earlier, Charlie. We have a self-advocacy resource unit, the ZARO unit, on our website, if anyone wants to look at any of those resources. Yeah, I suppose increasingly over the years, I'm happy to say Inclusion Ireland has put a huge focus on the voice, strengthening the voice of people with intellectual disabilities, and that they lead out on any of our events. So it's just part and parcel now of our criteria in organising events, that their voice is central to what we're doing, and in any of the campaigns that we're doing. And we also have here in Sligo, where I work with my colleague Barry, we've actually developed a manual to support people speak up and speak out. So if anyone's interested in that, I can circulate it to them. But yeah, so it's certainly an area we keep working on.
Okay, super. And I'm wondering, Ciara and Anne-Marie, people may have some more detailed questions on the course itself, or indeed the process of the total communication approach, etc. Would you be okay to put your emails in the chat box there? And if anybody wished to email you directly with specific questions, perhaps they might be able to do that.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay,
no problem.
and I might just say, Mary, there's a lot of comments coming through here, Mary, about your contribution, and people, you know, throughout the morning have been talking about your videos and really feel that they've learned a lot from your presentations.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, there's somebody asking, I'll hand back to you, Noreen, there, somebody asking for
Yeah, I think it's Elizabeth looking for a copy of the manual.
Yeah,
but
I'll put that up again. Yeah,
okay, Charlie. I'll put up the link that I mentioned about the Inclusion Ireland training manual. It's on our website somewhere, so I'll just have a quick look and see if I can put up the link to it. Because it's like the first stage to supporting people to speak up and speak out before they set up an advocacy group.
Okay,
so I'll do that.
Great.
Yeah, so there, that's great. Anne-Marie has put up her
and hers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the website, which is the Connecting Locally website, we also have featured, and this is a work in progress, it's at the early stages, we've featured other websites that might be helpful to people on the general topic of social inclusion. So I've put that into the chat there now. I see something there from Suzanne Brosnan, Kildare Libraries. Do you want to comment on that? Okay.
What's this?
So Kildare Libraries, a few things, the accessible videos, use of photo symbols, easy to read. Most of the Kildare Libraries have social stories, pre-visit guides available, with others working towards completing them. So that's really great. Yeah.
I've just put up my Noreen at Inclusion Ireland data if people want to get a copy. I don't get to put it up right now.
Okay, so
training guide.
Great. So we're coming to the end of our webinar, and a couple of people I just need to thank very briefly. Thanks to Ali for all your work behind the scenes. Ali, big thank you for that. And there are so many people in care who absolutely got right in behind all three research projects, but this one in particular. And may I thank you most sincerely for supporting Anne-Marie, Ciara, the 9 people who took part in the course. It was really with your support that really all of this came together. So now we're all going to say goodbye, and I'll hand you over to Michael Hurley, who is the Access Officer for Kildare County Council. And Michael has some very short closing remarks, just a short minute or two. And when Michael is finished, that's the end of the webinar. So goodbye, everybody, and thank you very much for your interest in this topic. Thanks.
My name is Michael Hurley, and I am the Access Officer for Kildare County Council. I would like to begin by commending CARE and the UCD Centre for Disability Studies on this excellent piece of research. What was presented this morning was very insightful and informative. We in Kildare County Council admire CARE's excellent work over the past 55 years in supporting people with disabilities to be treated as equal citizens in County Kildare. And we are delighted to partner with CARE on these research studies and look forward to working with them into the future. As you are aware, this excellent piece of research would not have been possible without the support and effort of a large number of people. I would like to begin by thanking the Minister for State for Disability and her department for making the funding available for this important research. Thank you to Katie Burke and Paula Mara, the CARE Operations Managers on the Steering Committee. May I also thank Dr. Geraldine Boland from the UCD Centre for Disability Studies for her guidance and expertise throughout all stages of this project. Another key person is Anne-Marie Potter from CARE. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Your work on this research has really made a difference. Thanks also to Ali Warner, who was the IT coordinator of today's webinar. I particularly want to thank the people with intellectual disabilities who generously gave their time to this research. You are the experts in what it is like to live with an intellectual disability, and your input has been vital. Finally, I want to thank you for coming to the webinar from wherever you joined in the world today. We hope that what we have learned here in County Kildare will help you to make important changes for people with intellectual disabilities that you support. The research that you've heard about today is a big step forward in identifying some of the barriers that people with intellectual disability face in being treated equally in their local communities. We all now share a responsibility to remove those barriers. Thanks again for your cooperation and participation.